Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Today we're going to take a look at how to do a subtle embossed background for any card. This just happens to be my ode to winter. It's been cold here in Virginia for the past couple of days where we had a really good warm snap, so I had made this card back right after Christmas and was thinking I was going to do it in January and never got to it. So this is my ode to winter to go away. I'm tired of the cold. I want some warm weather now. But I used the Simon Says Stamps Lots of Snowflakes and Comfort and Joy stamp sets and used a bunch of the different snowflakes to heat emboss them using the Silver Pearl embossing powder by Hero Arts. I love this embossing powder. I had at the time just gotten this Simon Says Stamp embossing pad and I was trying it out, and I'm still not sold on it completely. I still love my Versamark. I think it gives crisper images, and it could be just because this pad is so new. It's a little juicier than Versamark, so I'll give it a try a couple more times, and I have. But I still go back to my Versamark. I really like Versamark for embossing, and they were the original embossing pad, so that's where I'm going, and I'm probably going to stick with that. I chose a ton of different snowflakes from both sets because both of them have a ton of snowflakes in them. And as you can see, I just put them on different sides of my blocks. And I love having a bunch of different blocks in my collection. I have some square ones that I've had for a long time. Those are Stampin' Up ones. The round ones I believe I purchased from My Favorite Things, MFT. And I love having the finger holds in the round ones. But anytime you're doing something like this, stamping with blocks is the acrylic blocks is a whole lot easier than stamping with your a Misty or something like that. Misties are great, but for this kind of background, they're more cumbersome than they are useful. Notice I didn't heat this. I just needed to be able to see where I was putting my next stamps. So I put my embossing powder on there so I could see it. You can see it a little bit, but for the most part, you really can't see it until you're up on it. So I did a whole bunch of different snowflakes, and I'm sorry you might hear my kitty cat and some dings going on. I'm part of a work group and we're still working on some stuff. And anyway, I don't use the heat tool to set everything until the very end. This took me probably about, I'm gonna say 20 minutes. And most of that time, as you can see, was trying to make the decision of which stamp I wanted to put where. That took the most time than anything. But I just put my embossing powder on in stages. That, and I did not want my embossing ink to dry out. I didn't know what the life of this was without embossing powder on it and how quickly it dried. So it was kind of a twofold thing to help me see where my stamps were and to make sure that I was able to have embossing powder adhere to the images without any trouble. So I just went through and stamped a whole bunch of these on here, and then once I got this heat set, I realized that there were some big empty spots that I really wasn't fond of, so I went through with a teeny tiny little heart, and you'll see that here in just a minute. This is at twice the speed. I wish I could stamp and make the decision this fast, but it took me about 20 minutes to do this card. And the little container that I have here for my embossing powder, after I use this embossing powder up, I'm probably not going to stick with using those containers. I honestly like just pouring it out of the container over the image more and using the coffee filter to catch it, instead of having a bunch of different containers sitting around and that kind of thing. I just use the regular size of embossing powders. I don't buy multiples. I don't at a time to pour into a container. I just don't need it. I don't make a huge pile of cards all at one time, and most of us don't. We're going to sit down and make 1 or 2 cards. Maybe at Christmas we're going to make a whole bunch of cards. Maybe at the beginning of the year you're going to make some birthday cards and that kind of thing. Having a container like this is not bad, but for general use, I like just pouring it out of the container that it comes in more. So I do have the kitchen cutting board in my craft stash that is absolutely amazing for this kind of thing, to be able to, instead of trying to hold it with something or messing up your design or anything like that, this is a whole lot easier. Just put it on the board, and then you can use your heat tool, and you don't have to worry about burning your fingers. And you definitely don't want to take it directly to your cutting mat, because it'll warp your cutting mat, and I haven't found one that didn't yet. Isn't that gorgeous? That pearl embossing powder picks up that color, that light blue, sky blue color in the background, and it is absolutely beautiful. I loved that background. And as you can see, there's some little holes there, so I found an itty bitty teeny tiny little heart in one of the sets, and used my anti-static powder tool over the whole background again, just to make sure I didn't have any loose powders anywhere, and just stamped the heart in random places all over the background in the little holes and areas that I needed to. Absolutely adorable. Now you can do this method with any kind of stamp like this. You could even do it with small critter stamps and have a whole background full of critter stamps that are just the outline and tone on tone, or you can do it with a black outline and do a little bit of coloring in each one of them. I have another video that I'm going to do probably on Friday, that's going to have similar to this, but it's going to be just the outline images from a lawn fawn set. And you know how lawn fawn sets have those itty bitty teeny tiny little images, and I made a whole entire background and then used one large element on the front of it to bring it together. Absolutely adorable card. So you can get some really great uses out of those little stamps that you have, or anything that's like a pattern stamp. Even if it's just circles and squares, you can definitely come up with a background for circles and squares. That would be so cool. A very geometric pattern with just tone on tone. Or you can do rainbows or anything. This one just happens to be a subtle background using that pearl embossing powder. That is absolutely beautiful. But that pearl embossing powder is beautiful on everything. I absolutely love it. So now we're going to do a sentiment, and I'm using some Lawn Fawn, what color was that? Summer Splash ink. Which I found kind of ironic when I was doing this card, because we're letting it snow. So I have a piece of scrap white cardstock, and it's 80-pound Neenah Solar White, which is what I use most of the time for white in all of my cards, except for my card bases, which are 110-pound. And I stamped it the first time and didn't really like it. It kind of sucked. And I think it's because the first time I had ever used this stamp. So I'm going to do the stamp off method and also pick up some embossing ink, and then I'm going to put this into my regular ink and stamp it again, and it was much prettier this time. Anytime you have trouble stamping with a brand new stamp, try my favorite one is use the embossing ink, because for whatever reason it makes the ink stick to the stamp better, and all you have to do is stamp in the embossing ink, stamp off once, and then go to your regular ink color. It doesn't change or harm your colored ink pad in any way. It just makes everything, the colored ink actually stick to that photopolymer stamp a whole lot better. I'm going to trim down the panel, and I'm using, these are Spellbinders card making A2 rectangle dies. They're not stitched, they're just a plain frame, and I really like, instead of having a cut edge on them, I really like how this makes a finished looking edge on the card when I want to do this. It kind of smooths everything out like it does with any die. And I'm going to pop that out, and then I'm going to put some simple embellishments on the front of this card. and I'm gonna show you how to tie a bow. A big one of those like twiny bows that has all the different layers in it. I'm gonna show you how to tie that. So I fiddled with some white glimmer paper and to do a strip on here, and then also some silver mirror cardstock and some black, and I fiddled with it. I needed something to make that sentiment pop off of that background because the glitter paper just wasn't cutting it. That's actually not glitter paper, that's the shimmer paper that doesn't come off, and it's really shiny and pretty and it looks like glitter, but it's not. Love it. Absolutely amazing stuff. One comment about glimmer paper though. The ones that I have gotten from like Concord and Ninth, MFT, and Simon Says Stamp has all been great. It die cuts beautifully. Be careful of the ones that you're getting that you would get at like in a big pack from your local big box craft store. I got some from Christmas that was red and gold and green and white. It did not die cut. I don't care what I die cut it with, it did not die cut. I used just a plain old square die on it, and it did not die cut. So just be careful and be conscious of that when you're purchasing it. It was a little bit thicker, and it like had this plasticky background on it that just would not cut. It was ridiculous. I was very disappointed in it. I can use it for strips and stuff like this, but I can't like die cut like a word die or something out of it. Very frustrating. Back to the card. So I trimmed up a little piece of black and put it under the sentiment so it would pop off the page a little bit more off of the background. And then I layered some silver, and I layered the glitter paper there, and I just trimmed it off at an angle so they would both have the same angle, and slid those over to the edge. And then I'm going to put the sentiment, kind of move it over from the left a little bit, and I have some of those little trinkets that are like snowflakes and different things, and I have the snowflakes, and they have the holes in the top of them because they're meant to be charms on some jewelry. And I've had these things for years. I have no idea where I got them. So I found some that were kind of similar to it from Prima, and link those in the description down below. But I honestly have no idea where I got the ones that I'm using here. So I'm going to pop the sentiment up, and then I am going to get those trinkets. And I put those trinkets together first, and then I add them, make them look like they're attached to the bow instead of trying to attach them with the bow. So here are my little trinkets, and I've used 2 different ones, and I'll figure out how to arrange those, and then I'm going to use some twine and make a bow. This is Stampin' Up! Twine. I've had forever and ever and ever. I have a lot of Stampin' Up! Stuff that I'm either trying to use or I'm trying to get rid of, because years ago I was a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, so I still have a lot of Stampin' Up! Stuff. It's good quality stuff. However, there's just more out there that I absolutely love, so I'm not going to limit myself to just that one brand or that one product that Stampin' Up! Has. And don't get me wrong, I love it. They have beautiful things and beautiful stamps, but I'm not gonna limit myself to just that. So I tied these 2 together and left just a teeny tiny little bit of slack in the twine so that I could position these the way that I wanted to on my card front. And I actually ended up gluing those down. Alright, to make a bow. So the easiest way to make a bow is to wrap the twine around your fingers, and then pinch it in the middle, and take another little short piece of twine and tie that in a knot. That's the easiest way to do it. And for some reason, didn't want to cooperate. But I got it all fixed up and got everything wound back around the way it was supposed to be. The only thing about doing that is you want to make sure that your ends are on opposite sides of the bow. I don't use a pair of tweezers or anything. I just hold it down and wrap the string that I'm tying it with around once, and then the other end of the string in the opposite direction around once, and that holds it very, very, very well. And I tie the knot twice, and we have a little bow that's all nice and pretty. And then I can add the tails and do what I need to do. Usually I just use the tails from the wad of twine, and I don't use the tails from the knot. That's what I usually do. So I added a little piece. I'm going to add some glue to adhere these down to the card itself so they don't move around. These are pretty heavy, is why I went ahead and did that. And then I added a piece of foam tape under one of the legs of the top little snowflake so that it would stay put, because that one's really heavy and I didn't want it to pull the other pieces off. So add a little piece of foam tape and then just adhered that, and I added a little glue to the back side of the foam tape as well, so it would make sure that it'd stay where it needed to. Then I glued the bow on and stuck that off to the side, and we are done. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you give a subtle background with embossing a try. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also head over to my blog at jillcameroncreations.com. My newsletter sign up is over there, and also all of the products used in the video will be linked below. Thanks so much. Y'all have an amazing day.